In January 1968, Lance Corporal Jeffrey Roberts, 22 years old, from Davenport, Iowa, was serving with 2nd Battalion, 26th Marines at Khe Sanh Combat Base in I Corps near the Laotian border. The base sat on a plateau surrounded by hills and broken ground that gave the North Vietnamese Army observation over much of the area. By the time Roberts arrived, the base was already exposed and battered. The Marines there spent most of their time improving defenses. Bunkers were dug deeper each day because artillery fire had been increasing for weeks. The soil was hard in places and turned to mud in others depending on weather, so the work never really finished. Sandbags were stacked, restacked, and replaced after each rain or incoming round. Roberts worked in a section assigned to reinforce overhead cover using timber and additional sandbags taken from damaged positions. The bunkers stayed damp and wet even when it wasn't raining. Water collected along the floor and soaked clothing and gear. Rats moved freely through the trenches and sleeping areas, especially at night, and men stored what food they could inside sealed cans or hung it from cords. Sleep came in short stretches because artillery would come in at irregular hours and everyone kept equipment within reach. Food came mostly from sea rations. Some meals were heated using small fuel tabs when time allowed. Other times the cans were opened and eaten cold while sitting inside the bunker or along the trench line. Aircraft flew over the position regularly, and transport planes dropped supplies by parachute onto marked areas inside the perimeter. Not every drop landed cleanly, and Marines often ran to collect scattered crates while incoming fire occasionally followed the aircraft. Helicopters also brought supplies when weather and enemy fire allowed. They landed quickly and left just as fast. After the bombardment of January 21st, the days at Khe Sanh settled into a routine shaped by incoming fire and repair work. Roberts remained assigned to the defensive sector along the perimeter, where bunkers had been damaged during the opening attack. Each morning began with checking positions, clearing debris, and replacing sandbags torn open by fragments. Artillery fire continued. Some days passed with only a few rounds. Other days brought sustained shelling that forced everyone underground for long stretches. Aircraft became the main connection to the outside. Large transport planes approached low over the base and released pallets attached to parachutes. The drops landed inside marked zones near the runway or scattered across open ground. Roberts often found himself retrieving supplies, sometimes under fire. Not every drop landed where it was supposed to, and many times parachutes drifted outside the wire and could not be recovered safely. On several occasions, Marines watched supplies fall just beyond reach and remain there. Ammunition and water were given priority whenever possible, and rations were used carefully when deliveries were delayed by weather or enemy fire. Helicopters arrived less often than planes because they were more exposed to ground fire. When they came in, they landed briefly near the airstrip or a cleared pad and lifted out wounded men. Roberts saw stretchers carried across the dirt to waiting aircraft while others provided covering watch along the perimeter. The helicopters lifted out quickly and rarely stayed longer than necessary. Inside the bunkers, conditions stayed damp. Water seeped through the soil and pooled along the floorboards. Marines slept on ammunition crates or any dry surface they could find. Meals depended mostly on time and conditions. The same meals repeated often, and men traded items when they could. Coffee remained valuable because it helped keep watch during long periods of waiting. Throughout February, enemy pressure remained steady. Some nights included small probes toward the wire. By morning, the ground outside showed movement and occasional bodies left behind from the attempt. The big guns fired most of the time, and Marines got used to the outgoing fire. Casualties continued through the month. Some were from incoming rounds, others from sniper fire directed at movement inside the base. Roberts saw positions change hands as wounded were evacuated and replacements moved into place. By the end of February, the base showed constant wear. and the runway required constant repair. The perimeter trenches deepened from both digging and explosions. The siege continued with no clear end, and each day repeated the same pattern of incoming fire, repair, and waiting for aircraft overhead. On the morning of January 21, 1968, the siege began. Before dawn, heavy artillery struck the base from surrounding hills. The first rounds hit near the airstrip and then spread across the compound. Roberts moved from the sleeping area into a reinforced bunker as additional rounds landed nearby. The bombardment continued for hours and caused widespread damage across the base. One of the early impacts struck the main ammunition supply point. The explosion that followed destroyed large quantities of stored munitions and sent fragments across the compound. Fires burned for hours and secondary explosions continued after the initial blast. Marines moved wounded men into covered positions while corpsmen worked inside crowded bunkers. At first light, the extent of the damage was visible across Khe Sanh. Craters marked the airstrip and storage areas. Several bunkers were collapsed or partially buried. Roberts and others were assigned to clearing debris and reinforcing positions that had been weakened by the bombardment. Aircraft could not land immediately, so the wounded waited until flights could safely approach. From that day forward, the base remained under regular artillery attack. On April 1st, an incoming round landed near Roberts and sent fragments tearing through both of his legs. And later that day, he was carried to an evacuation chopper along with several other wounded Marines. Roberts was flown to the medical facility at Phu Bai Combat Base near Hue. There, surgeons removed fragments from both legs and repaired damaged tissue. He remained there for recovery while operations continued around Khe Sanh. On April 8, 1968, ground forces reached the base and the siege was officially broken. Roberts never returned to combat. He recovered at the hospital while his unit continued operations in the area. The Siege of Khe Sanh had lasted 77 long days, from January 21st to April 8th. By mid-1968, higher command determined the position was no longer necessary to hold. The surrounding area had been cleared and supply routes changed. The decision was made to abandon the Khe Sanh combat base. The last Marines departed the base on July 5th, and what remained of the base was destroyed. During the siege from January 21st to April 8th, U.S. forces sustained significant casualties. Official records list 274 U.S. personnel killed and more than 2,500 wounded, the majority being Marines of the 26th Marine Regiment and supporting units. Roberts left military service in early 1969 and returned to Iowa. His legs sustained permanent nerve damage but remain functional. And he considers himself one of the lucky ones. Thank you for joining us tonight.